Right. It is an opposition Wednesday, and for that, we brought in Greg Auman from The Athletic. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's always nice to have somebody return. Makes me feel like we didn't do a horrible job last time.
No problem.
Last time you were on, the team was in the playoffs and making moves. I'm curious, what did that make your schedule like? How busy have you been since the team you covered won the Super Bowl?
Well, for starters, the month of January has not necessarily been a busy month to be covering the Buccaneers, at least since I've been on the beat. So that changed everything in terms of just, you go nonstop until a week into February. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly a level of interest in all things Bucks now that wasn't there. More interest in the off season, everything, with a guy like Brady on the roster, anytime Brady talks, whether he's got a podcast or an appearance on a show, you kind of have to chase that. So yeah, I think, with all things, as there's more interest in the team, it keeps you busy or trying to keep up with everything.
And since we last talked, you have written a book, yes, The Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I got a chance after the season. Triumph Books does a lot of books for championship teams, and with the help of a guy named Joey Johnston here in town, got to co-write a book called Tampa Bay. A lot of fun with that. This was definitely the kind of season that you want to write a book about, and was really fortunate. That's my first book I've ever written. Really cool to be a part of that. Get to have that is something I'll always have from that season.
I am fascinated by the guys that can pull that off. Tell us the kind of time that it took, daily, and just the endeavor it is to start and complete a book. Everybody starts a book, right? I mean, there are a lot of people that have started books. It's the ending point of finishing a book that is so tough. Tell us how it came to be and how you got it done.
Yeah, honestly, I had it very easy. A lot of times you'll have books that are months or a year in the process. The way Triumph works is once there are a certain number of teams left in the season, they reach out to writers and kind of set books in motion with. We knew once the Bucks had won the NFC Championship, we knew it was in place. So I had done a lot of the writing leading up to that, and then a busy week kind of there's that kind of off week between the championship game and the Super Bowl where there's not a lot you have to do. So that made that a very busy week. And then it's one of those where they basically have both books written in case the Bucks win, or in this case, if the Chiefs won, and the team that wins, obviously their book is the one that gets printed. So had definitely a long night. That championship night in Tampa when they won to kind of close things out. It's amazing how quick they can turn things around. They had that book on the shelves in Tampa a week after the season ended, a week after they won the Super Bowl. So really neat to be involved with. But from a labor of love standpoint, I had it very easy compared to a lot of authors, and especially a lot of first-time authors.
I'll put you on the spot here. I was wondering if you had a couple of anecdotes that stick out to you from the book.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it was such a cool season to go back and recapture game by game the moments that stood out. I think the most, when you think about this season, I think everybody saw this, but to be able to go back and reconstruct the throw to Scotty Miller before halftime and just to build up to that, you think about Bruce Arians and deciding to literally take his punt team off the field to go for it on fourth down. When they already had a decent lead against Green Bay, but to try and really create some separation, not only to go for it on fourth down, but then to really go for it and throw deep to Scotty Miller when a lot of teams would have probably just kind of set up for a field goal to add some points. That was kind of the biggest moment of that postseason run. I mean, the Super Bowl, was kind of anticlimactic as much as the Bucs dominated it. So when you think about the close games that got them to that Super Bowl, I think that's probably the most memorable play that still stands out to me. It's just it was a story about a season. So, I mean, it just so much the way things came together for them to go from the stumbles they had to lose 3 out of 4 and just be a 7-5 team when they went to their bye week to the way things really clicked on both sides of the ball to come together and win 8 straight and get a championship here. That's what I remember most.
You mentioned Arians, so we'll segue into my next question, which was, how long do you think he plans on being there? And then of his two, his offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, both should be in line for head coaching jobs. Do you think one of them will wait for Arians to retire? Which one of the coordinators do you see being a head coach first?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles, I think will both be interviewed and considered strongly for jobs. I mean, we don't know how this season will shake out. I think some of the reason that they didn't get jobs last year is just as well as the team did. It's hard to get NFL teams to wait on a candidate until their season is done. So it's rare to have a Super Bowl team where all the coordinators are back, all the coaches are basically back from last year's team. I think Todd Bowles, because he's the more experienced, established guy, he's been a head coach before, he's probably the easier call in terms of hiring coaches right now. I think anytime you make somebody a first-time head coach, that's a leap. I think Byron Leftwich is certainly ready for it. As a guy that's, a young coach, he's 3 years younger than Tom Brady is. So to be only 41, to be as accomplished as a coordinator and a play caller, I think when you get into the hiring cycle, young offensive minds are always kind of a catnip for NFL teams that they want to go after, and there's a lot of interest in. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. Honestly, they could lose both. Like you said, I would think at least one of them would probably have an eye on eventually succeeding Bruce as the head coach. These guys both have a long history with Bruce Arians. So, I don't know if in the building there's a different expectation for when Bruce is done. I mean, he's 69 years old. I think if he won another championship, he might be done when Tom Brady is done. We don't know what Tom has left. Tom's a guy who's so remarkably competitive and doesn't want to step away. He's 44 years old now. He's doing things that nobody north of really 40 has done. So it's hard to put an end date on the quarterback. And I think as long as you have Brady coming back, there'll be such an expectation of the high possibility of winning and even, winning championships that'll be hard to walk away from. But, Bruce has already retired at least once. I think he's aware of being able to go out on top or very close to the top here in Tampa. So I'll be curious to see both when Bruce is done and when Brady is done.
How much of voice does Tom Brady have in the organization right now?
I wouldn't say a voice. I think he certainly has input. I think when you think about reasons that people come to Tampa, that probably starts for most people with the chance to play and go after a championship with a guy who's won more titles than anybody. So I don't think it's as much as is sometimes made out in terms of, if Tom Brady made a call to Odell Beckham, that's all it would take. I think they trust Tom's opinion. I think when you have someone who has seen what it takes to get to the Super Bowl, not only to win, but just to have seasons. There's 10 Super Bowls. So, he knows what it takes to construct a team to get there. I think they value his opinion, but I think it's still not ultimately anything he decides, just something where, I think Antonio Brown was a good case of him wanting something, lobbying for something, vouching for someone, and kind of having the ear of the right people to, when they got to a position where they had some injury concerns at receiver last year, he had enough sway to help them, have the reason to trust in someone like Antonio Brown, that obviously things had kind of gone sideways at his last 3 stops. And that's worked remarkably well when you think about how AB has been able to kind of do and say the right things in more than a year now in Tampa. I think that helps him the next time he wants to go to bat for someone and get them to bring somebody in.
It's early in the week. I know that there is a game on Sunday. What does the early injury report for Tampa look like?
Yeah, they still have a lot they're dealing with. They had a ton that were injured before the bye, and I don't know that the bye week has really helped them very much. The biggest names won't be there Sunday. Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown at practice today. They were just kind of working on the side. They didn't look anything close to being able to be game ready in 4 days. So they're both out again. They have 2 guys that are trying to come back from injured reserve, a corner named Sean Murphy-Bunting and a receiver in Scotty Miller. I think they're both making progress, but I can't say I expect either of them to go on Sunday. There's 2 other corners coming back from injury that I think will be fine. That's Richard Sherman and Dee Delaney. Neither of them played in New Orleans, but I think they both will be able to go on Sunday. The new kind of question mark that adds some intrigue to Sunday is Chris Godwin, and that he didn't practice today. He's dealing with a foot injury. I don't know that it's anything significant enough that would keep him from going right now. But if he didn't go Thursday or Friday, they'd have a significant amount of injuries. I mean, if he's out, if Scotty Miller's out, if Antonio Brown is out, it's basically Mike Evans, Tyler Johnson, and then a cast of fill-ins. They did sign Brashad Perriman to their practice squad today. He's a guy that was with them in 19, had six touchdowns in 2019 here in Tampa, but has not played this year. Was with the Lions, got cut, was with the Bears, and was inactive for 8 weeks. So he could be somebody who steps in and after just 4 days is kind of dressing and playing as like a wide receiver 4 or 5 on Sunday. Chris Godwin, probably the biggest question mark, though, in terms of injuries and things to watch for Sunday.
I've often said that it feels like Washington tried or is trying to do what Tampa did, filling in the roster and then, inserting quarterback one. Is that a successful way to do things, or is that literally just, we had Tom and he's the greatest quarterback of all time?
Yeah, I don't know if I see a whole lot of parallels. I mean, the Washington defense looked like the kind of thing you could really build around last year. And obviously offensively they had their share of injuries. I mean, I think the plan would have been to have Ryan Fitzpatrick as the guy, and he's been out since the opener. Curtis Samuel hasn't been there for him. Logan Thomas is hurt. They've had offensive line injuries. But more than anything, I'm just struck by how much this defense has taken a step back. I mean, statistically, for them to be bottom 5 in the league in yards and points allowed, worst in pass defense, worst in third down defense, it's not nearly the unit to be respected and feared as what they saw when they went up there in January.
No, they're not. It has been frustrating and odd all at the same time. Will the Bucs use this game? I remember last year in that playoff game, I mean, they just pounded the ball with Fournette on Washington. It has been more, at least from the outside looking in, of a high-flying pass offense for Tampa Bay this year. You think they'll use this game against Washington to reset the running tone, getting ready for the playoffs?
They could. I mean, they got 9 games for the playoffs. I see Washington, I forget what the number is, 298 or 292, but they've given up more passing yards than any team in the NFL. I think last year's Washington team gave up 20 touchdown passes and had 16 interceptions. I guess it's 21 and 16 last year. This year, they've already given up 20 touchdowns, and I think it's either 4 or 6 interceptions against that. So, I mean, that's some really encouraging numbers if you're coming in with the NFL's leading passer in touchdowns and yards. I think they're going to throw the ball a fair amount, even if AB isn't there, if Godwin is limited. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. If they get the lead, by all means, they'll lean on Fournette. They'll run the ball a lot. But in terms of creating some separation, I think they can do that through the air more likely.
Greg, let's wrap with this, and I appreciate your time today.
Sure.
If this, I don't think many expect the upset. What is the schedule? How do you get the upset here, Washington over Tampa?
Yeah, I would look back to what New Orleans did, and New Orleans is probably a better team, but turnovers is absolutely the key. I think Tom Brady had 4 turnovers in the first 8 games of the season, and he had 3 against the Saints, and that led to 17 points. That was a big part of why they won that game. So I do think absolutely that defense has to step up in a way they haven't. They have to get pressure on Brady. You got to get multiple turnovers. I mean, that's what they have to do. It's probably not what they've done best. I think there's definitely vulnerabilities where Washington will be able to move the ball against this Bucs defense. They haven't been a dominating defense of late, especially just as shorthanded as they are at quarterback. So, no, I think this is a game where they could score 17, 20 points against the Bucs without really having to really stretch themselves. But more than anything, they've got to contain this offense. And to do that, I think you need help with turnovers. So if you can do like the Saints did, get 3 turnovers, get some red zone stops where you're getting away with 3 points instead of 7, that's what kind of bridges the two teams and brings them closer together. That would be my model. If you saw a 24-21 Washington upset, I don't think that's going to happen. But if you did that with a couple of turnovers and a red zone miss or 2, that's what would bring these teams a little closer together and make things possible on Sunday.
Greg Auman covers the Bucs for The Athletic. Make sure you get a subscription. There's usually always some kind of deal going on. Greg, what do you got coming up this week?
Yeah, I'm actually writing on Todd Bowles. The Bucs defensive coordinator gets to go back to Washington as he has before, but played I think 7 of his 8 NFL seasons there in Washington. So talking to a lot of his old coaches and teammates about who he was as a player and how that kind of set up the success he's had as a coach and as a defensive mind here, as a coach.
I was always disappointed when Washington didn't bring Todd Bowles in for their, not this head coaching job, but the previous one. Hell of a coach.
Sure.
Greg, I appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Oh, no problem. Thanks again, and look forward to the game on Sunday.
Absolutely.